Hi, I'm Paul Johnson, and I'm a professor at Utah State University in the Department of Plant, Soils, and Climate, and I'm also department head as well. So those are my academic roles. But my research and teaching interest is all working with these things we're standing on, all the turf grasses, and I hope this Agriscience project can introduce you both to an application of our drones, as well as learning about the things we play on as well. I also would like to introduce the fact that I have a stutter as well, something I've always had, and I just want you to be aware, and feel free to ask questions about that too when we come together later on in the month. I'd like you to learn a little bit more about the amazing plants that you play on the playgrounds, on athletic fields, and on your lawns and other places. These are amazing plants that can handle our walking on, our playing on, and a lot of conditions that most plants can't tolerate. It's an ecosystem just like every other ecosystem, just not as showy as maybe an Amazon rainforest. We've got plants, we've got insects, the soil underneath is diverse, we have all kinds of activity growing in this turf. And I hope through this you can learn a little bit about that, and then we'll apply the drones and how they can improve what we do as well. So before the camp, I'd like for you to look at a few things, and that's the scavenger hunt part of this Agriscience project. You spend a lot of time playing on fields, a playground, your lawn, athletic fields. Now I hope you maybe look at those areas a little bit more differently. So the first thing I'd like you to do, and this isn't involving a field itself, but to describe what makes a good field to play on. Think about, is it hard? Is it soft? Somewhere in between? How dense the grass is. How does that, is a dense grass good, or is a thinner grass good? Long grass or short grass? How about the color? How does the color of that field make it a good field or a bad field, or make it a good place to play on? How does it feel? Is it soft? Is it stiff? What's best when you're out there playing? How about the temperature? Is a cool place to play, a hot place to play? And that comes in when I'm sure you've experienced some artificial fields and how they might be warmer. Think about how that affects your playing on that field. Do you prefer a very smooth surface, a bumpy surface? How does that affect what you consider a good field to play on? So think about those things, and we'll come back together during our camp, and we'll talk about those and share those impressions you all have on those fields. The first activity I'd like you to do on the field that you choose to study and to look at, and that might be a playground, it might be a soccer field, it might be a park, or even your home lawn, is to collect a few plants. So some of each of the different kinds of plants that you see growing on that lawn. Now, at first you might think all this are the same, but once you actually look real closely, I think you'll realize there'll be different grasses out there, different leaf shapes, different textures, weeds, and so look around carefully and find those different kinds of kinds of plants out there. And then I'd like you to carefully preserve a plant of each type, the type that you find. And now I don't want you to make big holes, because the people at the school or the park are going to get angry at you. So just be really careful in picking the plants that you'll save. So you can do that by digging down a little bit into the turf, grab hold of some of those plants. That's not a great one. We'll try again. Dig down at the base of the plant if you can, and pull up a little chunk. Real small. And then you can kind of separate out these stems that you have until you get to something like this right here. This is a turfgrass plant. There's many millions of individual plants out here, and that together is what creates the turf. So you can kind of pull off the extra stuff, and you'll come down to the stem, the leaves, the roots, etc. So it'll kind of collect a piece like this, and then you can save these for, you can preserve them and then save them for a long time by simply pressing them in between some water paper. You could lay that piece on a piece of, or lay those on a plant, on a piece of the paper, and lay another piece of paper on top, and then lay a book or two on top of that on a hard table or something, and leave it there for a couple days, and the paper will draw the water out of the plant, and then preserve that for a long time to come. You could still see all the leaves and the shoots and the roots on there. It's just that it'll help preserve it. In your kit, you'll receive just a few supplies that'll help you out. Some paper to press the plants on, the grasses and the weeds and other things you find, and then you also have a screwdriver, real complex tool to look at that we'll use to begin looking at the soil. We will also have a few worksheets and photos also for you to work on as well. Now, after you've collected all your grasses and weeds, the next part I'd like you to look at is what we have underneath the grasses, and that's to begin looking at this and that's to begin looking at the condition of the soil that these are growing on. And we're going to use a really complex tool to begin looking at that. I mean, mainly we want you to get a feel for how firm or soft that soil is. You'll find on the field you were looking at, there's going to be soft spots, hard spots, and you'll begin to see how that's affecting the grasses and how they grow. Right here on the quad here on campus, in this area, you can kind of poke that into the ground, and it goes in fairly easily. If you poke that in, you kind of feel that it doesn't go in. It's easy to push that in. You'll find that on your field too, most likely. And that means the soil isn't compacted, it's not squeezed all together. So there's lots of room for the roots to begin growing in and for that to thrive. Now I've gone to another location on this field and I push this into the ground and it's really firm. I can hardly get this in the ground. The soil here is much harder, much more compacted, and that's affecting this whole strip of grass here. This is an area that had some construction recently, and that construction caused that soil to be compacted more, and the grasses don't tend to grow as well as a result. You may find the same thing on your fields where most of the activity is at, right by a soccer goal or lacrosse goal, or down the center of a field where a lot of the traffic is. So when you poke around and you see that areas are really hard, kind of look at the grass on top too to see if it's as healthy and as thick as in the other areas. You also will find areas that maybe look really dry, where like we have right here. This is an area where the irrigation isn't quite reaching, or the soil conditions aren't holding as much water. This will be a really hard area to poke that in. Actually, this is as far as I can go. So you'll find areas like that too. So map out or write down some notes on where you find these kind of areas as well. And you can see how it's affecting the grass. They become very thin, the leaves have kind of closed up, it isn't as thick, and it's affecting how that grass grows and how it will take your playing on it too. You might find very different kinds of grasses. If you're in St. George or in a southern Utah place, you're going to find different grasses than what we have up here in Logan. Many different kinds of grasses are adapted to athletic fields or places like this, but the environment, the climate, will help determine which is best adapted. What we have here are cool season grasses, and in St. George you'll have those that are adapted to the warm season much more. I won't get into managing grasses and the advantages and disadvantages of each. The goal here is just to see that you've got different kinds of plants in that field, and to start looking at where they tend to grow and where there's worn areas, where it's growing well, just to kind of look at the field and see what kind of conditions there are. Here's an example of some of the different kinds of grasses you might find in your park or your field you're looking at. And I just very quickly looked out here on the quad here on campus and found 4 different kinds of grasses present right here. This is the one that I first showed you, and it's kind of medium blades, medium wide leaf blades. We have some that are very coarse leaf blades, some that are very fine and kind of a darker green color, and some that are kind of light green color and have some have some flowers on them too. So you'll probably find this many and more on the field you're looking at. So look for different leaf widths, leaf shapes, leaf colors, if there's flowers or other things, to find all the different kinds of grasses out there. And now the other part of the project, and what we'll talk about during our camp, is how we use drones. Drones are becoming a very useful tool for people caring for or taking care of athletic fields, golf courses. It's being used a lot in agriculture now. Because you get a bird's eye view, you can see a big area very quickly and begin to look at the patterns of where grasses aren't growing as well. Crops aren't growing as well. We can even use different sensors on those drones and look at areas that are more stressed, maybe because of water, or because of traffic, or because of insects or diseases. The drones can give us a very quick picture of a big area and help us manage and fix areas much faster. So we'll be learning from the aviation program on the drones, and then how they can be used in turf areas, in agricultural fields, and other things.